Hi, I'm Carl DeMilia, President of the Connecticut Library Association. Mark Twain was one of the most celebrated authors who lived in Connecticut. His book, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, is one of the most challenged and banned books because Huck Finn uses an offensive term to refer to slaves. Huckleberry Finn is a look at the terrible past and should be an opportunity for learning rather than censorship. Today, I'm in the Mark Twain House Museum and Library in Hartford to read a passage from Huckleberry Finn. Next to me is an original edition of Huckleberry Finn from the museum's collection. In this passage, Huck Finn must decide if he will send a letter revealing the location of Jim, a runaway slave. In the slave-owning society of the time, this would have been considered the right thing to do. I felt good and all washed clean of sin for the first time I had ever felt so in my life, and I knowed I could pray now. But I didn't do it straight off, but laid the paper down and sat there thinking how good it was all this happened so, and how near I come to being lost and going to hell. And went on thinking, and got to thinking over our trip down the river, and I see Jim before me all the time, in the day and in the nighttime, sometimes moonlight, sometimes storms, and we are floating along, talking and singing and laughing. But somehow, I couldn't seem to strike no places to harden me against him, but only the other kind. I'd see him standing my watch on top of his'n, instead of calling me so I could go on sleeping. And see him how glad he was when I come back out of the fog, and when I come to him again in the swamp, up there where the feud was, and such like times. And how good he always was. And at last I struck the time I saved him by telling the men we had smallpox aboard. And he was so grateful and said I was the best friend old Jim ever had in the world and the only one he's got now. And then I happened to look around and see the paper. It was a close place. I took it up and held it in my hand. I was a-trembling because I'd got to decide forever betwixt two things, and I knowed it. I studied a minute, sort of holding my breath, and then says to myself, all right then, I'll go to hell, and tore it up. It was awful thoughts and awful words, but they was said, and I let them stay said, and never thought no more about reforming. I shoved the whole thing out of my head, and said I would take up wickedness again, which was in my line, being brung up to it, and the other weren't. And for a starter, I would go to work and steal Jim out of slavery again. And if I could think up anything worse, I would do that too, because as long as I was in, and in for good, I might as well go the whole hog.